Welcome to Lighten Up, the art of living clutter-free, the podcast where we tackle the literal and figurative clutter standing between you and your healthiest and happiest life. I'm Melanie, your host, coach, and guide on this journey to help you design a life that you love. Whether it's clearing out your kitchen cabinets, untangling your digital files, or letting go of the mental blocks that hold you back, we're here to make space for what truly matters. Let's lighten up together, starting now. Welcome back to another episode of Lighten Up, the art of living clutter-free, where we talk about all things clutter, physical, mental, digital, calendar, like everything that is a block in your life. That is what we talk about. I have a special guest today that I'm very excited about. I have Heather Markel with me. I've known her a really long time. But before I explain why and all those things, let me read her bio. Heather Markel spent over 25 years stuck behind a desk in her corporate career. In 2017, she made a bold decision to quit her job and take a 6-month career break to travel the world. Instead, she found a new way of life. Since that time, she's been to over 41 countries on 6 different continents, including being marooned in New Zealand for 2 years during the pandemic. Talk about a great place to be. Over 7 years later, she still has no permanent address. Today, Heather is a New York Times featured full-time travel and business coach who works with professionals who want to start or sustain extended travel or work remotely while traveling. She's a best-selling author, a TEDx speaker focused on the opportunities of full-time travel. She teaches her clients the mindset, money, and mastery they need in order to achieve and navigate that lifestyle. Her mission is to help frustrated professionals seeking freedom, flexibility, and fun to ditch their desk and discover their destiny through full-time travel. And by the way, she's an old high school friend of mine. So, oh my goodness, Heather, I'm so happy you're here. Thank you for being here.
Sure. Very happy to be here too. And wow, you did all that in it felt like one breath. That was very well done.
Heather, I have so many questions for you. And I'm really going to start with something really basic because everyone knows every episode we're going to talk about clutter in some way. And with you, we're going to talk both about physical and mental clutter. So the first question is, where's your stuff? If you have no permanent address, where is your stuff?
So it's funny. It was in storage. My approach when I first started traveling was, I really did think it was a 6-month break. So I kept my apartment and my stuff in it. Then I realized, no, this is more than 6 months. So I'm going to get rid of the apartment, but I'll be back in a year. So I'll probably need most of my stuff and I'm not going to want to have to pay for all this again. So stuck it into 2 storage units and then got marooned in New Zealand. And I'm paying for storage. This really sucks. I can't get to the storage. Eventually came back and emptied out one of the 2 units, but kind of was like, wow, I've lived without this stuff for so long now, and I'm paying all this money for one unit. It's still money. So it ended up that I'm able to empty out the second storage unit and throw out a lot. So now it's like some stuff is at my mom's place and the rest is gone.
Wow. How does it feel to say the rest of the stuff is gone?
It's, in a way, it's funny. I think when I went through it in the storage unit, there was some emotional attachment to some stuff, but then it's like, well, it's gone now. I'm okay with it. I don't know. Like I lived so long, all these years without it, that obviously I kept the things that still have some tactile importance to me, but otherwise, yeah, now I'm fine.
I love that. It's interesting because I think a lot of people assume that, full-time travel means that you just got rid of everything.
And sometimes you do. Yeah.
Right. But it doesn't have to be that. And I know a cousin of my husband's, he and his wife are in the middle of selling everything off so they can travel full time. And so to me, that looks very different than the story that you're telling. And I'm sure in all of the people that you've coached and met along the way, there are thousands of other variations of removing items from our lives. And I think it's really important to say that there's a lot of emotional attachment to our things, whether they're useful to us or not. There's a lot of emotion tied into them. And then the question is, do these items serve as proof of life, or are they just a sampling of what makes me, the things that I choose to keep, the things I don't choose to keep. And the reality is that it's okay. Everything has energy. I say this all the time. Everything has energy. Inanimate objects and animate objects. So when we're cleaning out, get rid of everything that has negative energy, no matter who it belonged to, how much it cost you, whether or not you think it may be useful in the next decade. If it has positive energy, hang on to it. And so I love that you said tactile, because I love things. I love color and patterns and textures and mixtures of patterns and textures. So things are important to me, but it's really important to only have the things that are meaningful. Now, some of those things that are meaningful in my life came from travel.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I know about you being on full-time travel is that you're not buying souvenirs everywhere you go.
True and not
So
true.
start with that.
So the souvenir shifted. It's like, on vacation, it's like, oh, I want that. And that, oh, look at that. Oh, that's so cool. Oh, you just buy because it's so cool. Then you get home with tons of stuff. And some of it, oh, that can go over here in this shelf. And some of it's like, I don't know why I bought it. I'll just put it in this bag and deal with it later. And you don't. My souvenirs now are more like bracelets, necklaces, so stuff that I can tell you where I got like every one of my bracelets, and they are a tactile reminder of a time I spent somewhere. And I just looked recently, I have over 123,000 photos on my iPhone. So, those become my memories. Sometimes, I'll be somewhere a long time and I'll have to go to a secondhand shop and get like a t-shirt or something. I might keep the t-shirt and be like, hey, look, So it's just much less stuff, primarily because, one, I have to carry it all myself. And no matter how little I pack, it's too much. And two, like airlines, if you're flying anywhere and they're charging you to check a bag, you just don't want those overage fees.
Right. Right. I love the whole concept of not having all the clothing that you need, because wherever you go, there you can buy, and wherever you go, you can probably buy secondhand. I made a commitment at the beginning of the year to move towards my wardrobe, and that includes bags and accessories and jewelry, to move to the point where it's about 75% secondhand. And so in part, it's the thrill of the find and setting a goal and seeing if I can make it also makes me feel a lot better about the environment. And it also means that, like, if I'm not completely attached to it after I bring it home, I can just redonate it or resell it to the consignment store or whatever that is. So I love the idea that, if I was in the middle of who knows where and I ran out of, it can always be replaced in that moment. Tell us the difference between full-time travel and extended vacations.
So I know we were talking earlier about sometimes people will take a month and they'll go somewhere and think like that. I'd say that may be a version of full-time travel, but to me, full-time travel is more like after that month is up, you're going to go somewhere else for another month. You're not coming home. You keep on traveling to different places. So that means whatever you pack, that's it. And that might be it for a year. That might be it for 6 months. You're going to be doing laundry, and you're not staying in a hotel and doing like their service where it's like $50 to wash your socks. You're going to the laundromat, or you have an Airbnb with a washer dryer. You're living in a place, as opposed to and there is, we can debate on all of these terms, but there is to me a difference between a tourist and a traveler. I feel like we are travelers. We don't come from there. We can't obviously claim that we are born and raised and know as much as a local. However, we certainly get more familiarity with a place than the average tourist. And while a long-term 1 month stay somewhere that somebody goes to and comes back, typically they're also you might buy a second bag, you might fill it with lots of stuff that that you want. You're going to bring back all the coffee you loved or all the whatever pasta, we're not doing that. And while that person may be fixated on relaxation and maybe doing some tourist stuff, but relaxing, the traveler to me is kind of, yes, we want to see some of the main things that we can see there, sure. But a lot of it is, it's beyond relaxation. It's like we're discovering. So
Mhm.
I love nothing more than just meeting a local and then like they're like, "Oh, you need to go to this spot or meet me here. I'm going to go here. Why don't you come with me?" And
Mhm.
finding new places that I would never have heard of without meeting those people. But I do think a primary difference between a long vacation and full-time travel is that the vacation mindset, you are spending more money, you are probably staying in a nice place. You might rent an Airbnb and have a really nice Airbnb, but you're typically kind of focused on this more luxurious experience. Whereas we're budgeting for a longer term period of travel. So we're more likely to do a pet sit or stay in a hostel or a lower budget kind of place. We're doing less shopping. We're not eating out at all the best restaurants at the place. They know we're doing a more really daily life experience over a long period of time in different places.
I love this. I mean, I love to get into games of semantics. And so I think there's probably a lot loaded in there. But what I hear is you're living your life wherever you are at that moment, as
Correct.
opposed to vacationing.
Yep.
And people will say, oh, I live my best life on vacation. I get that. But you're not, I think like we think of holiday. I am on holiday. I am taking a break from
Correct.
something. But when I hear what you're saying, you're not taking a break from something. You're just being there and present in that space in that moment. Is that fair?
That's really fair and important because mentally, that's another big difference. Mentally, if you're on a long vacation, I booked my travel. I'm coming back in 4 weeks and I've probably planned some stuff out, but like I'm whatever. If it's a different thought process, like, oh, I've only got 3 weeks left, only 2 weeks left. And then, yes, we're doing the same thing, except it's like, oh, but I'm not going back to my home in blank. My next stop after Italy is like Germany. And then from Germany, I'm going to go to Croatia. And then from Croatia, I'm going to, or I don't know where I'm going, but I'll figure it out. So imagine just living out of your suitcase for a year and just with not knowing where you're going to be the next 10 months.
So everybody should know Heather has a new podcast. Your podcast is called
How to Travel Full Time.
Okay, then we're going to learn. I caught an episode where you talked about on your first trip and where you were staying, like you were reaching the end and you broke down
Yep.
crying.
Yes.
Can you tell us that story?
Yeah. So that was the moment that I almost gave up and thought I was nuts. Yeah, so I booked, I finally quit. I'm like, where should I go? I picked Costa Rica. I decided to stay for like somewhere around 6 weeks because I had to come back for jury duty at the time. And so before I knew what happened, literally, it just happened so fast. I had pre-planned my first 2 weeks. Every place I was staying, all the activities, all the bus transport, everything. And then I was like, Heather, stop. Like the whole point of you doing this was to experience this last minute go with the flow travel. And if you keep pre-booking everything, you can't do that. So thankfully I made that decision, which was good because there is some empowerment with the idea of like, if you hate a place, you haven't booked it for a month, you can just go. If you love
Right.
a place, you can add time on. It's really
Right.
cool. But yeah, so on the last night of my pre-planned 2 weeks of travel, I ended up being in a remote part of Costa Rica called Corcovado National Park. Had to take a boat to get there. I'm sleeping in it's a tent on the beach. I mean, there was like a platform, but it's basically you're sleeping fairly outdoors. There were giant cockroaches, which I just told them, you don't bother me. I don't kill you. We had that agreement. So, and then I had met this Canadian couple in my travels and they were going to a place called Samara and I wanted to meet them over there after Corcovado National Park. So I was trying to figure out how do I get from here, Corcovado, over there to Samara. And the Wi-Fi, like the internet was terrible. I mean, I'm on a beach. It's like on an island, The manager
Yeah.
of this property is clearly one of those people that doesn't like his job and could help me, but basically doesn't want to. So, I spend 3 or 4 hours trying to figure out how am I going to get here? And the only two avenues I could find, because I just assumed there was a boat. I would take some ferry or something. Nope. I had to either take an overnight bus trip that sounded extremely dangerous from every account I had heard about, like being on an overnight bus there at the time. And then the other option was a flight, which was way out of my budget. And so I had this meltdown because I'm like, well, here I am on the last night of my pre-planned travel. I can't figure out how to meet these two friends that I made in another part of the same country. Clearly, I'm not cut out for full-time travel. And I just lost it and I started crying. And I like, okay, so I can go back to New York. I can ask for my job back. At least I tried. And then boo-hoo, boo-hoo. And then this like wise voice in my head then said like, Heather, well, instead of trying so hard to get where you can't go, why don't you figure out where you can go? And I was like, and from then on, I never looked back because I was like, yep, found the perfect place, had a total spiritual encounter and just moved on. So it was great.
I love that. So I would imagine that moment is the kind of moment that prevents someone from becoming a full-time traveler. Okay. So, but I can think of a million reasons why people would say, I can't be a full-time traveler. So this is where we start talking about like all the mental clutter, the things that create blockages. So I think probably the number one is financial. So can you speak to removing the financial clutter of getting in the way of travel?
Yeah. And so I spent 10 years talking myself out of full-time travel because it was too expensive. If you're from a major city like New York, if you're on the dollar or the euro, you will find in many places of the world, life as a full-time traveler is radically different and radically less expensive. And that kind of pissed me off when I started traveling. I'm like, so I gave up 10 years of this life because I thought it was too expensive. And it turns out, I think the difference is, and everyone's financial situation is different. So I'm speaking generally because when I talk to
Right.
individuals, like I get more information. But I think the important thing is that in a fixed life, you have fixed costs. It's like every month you pay rent, every week you might buy specific groceries, like whatever it is. When you are traveling full time, you are not a victim to your costs. You are the controller of your costs. So let's say I'm like, in week 2 of my month, wherever I am, or my 3 months, whatever it is, and I suddenly go, oh my gosh, like I'm over budget for this month. Well, I can just recalibrate. That might mean staying somewhere else. That might be not eating out at all for the next 2 weeks. Like whatever the thing is, it's like I can just easily recalibrate. I do a lot of pet sitting. So I was just in London. London is extremely expensive. So depending on your budget, that may or may not be an affordable city. But if you pet sit, which means you're looking after someone's animals while they're away, and you get use of their home and their kitchen. I was lazy this trip. I went and I went to the supermarket and microwaved like meals, but $5 for my meal instead of 50, and plus the hotel, which is 100. So these are ways that you can easily recalibrate and be in control of your expenses when you travel.
Right. What I remember about when my daughter was living in London was much better. The frozen food was one of her great takeaways from living in
Yes.
London.
Yeah. I think there's less stuff and chemicals and products put in food in other countries.
Yes. 100%. Okay. So everything you just said made total sense. So full-time travel isn't as expensive. Do you find that you have to convince people of that?
It depends on the person. I remember one of my favorite clients, like he told me after we were done, he's like, when I hired you, I didn't really think that this was possible. And I really only hired you because I just wanted to see if I was wrong, if you could prove me wrong. And he was just one of those like logical spreadsheet kind of people. And so I gave him a logical spreadsheet breakdown of how this would look and how to plan it out. And he's like, I can do that. I can do that. So yeah, I think it really depends on your level of resistance.
Right.
And also, you do need to change things. I had to change my life, right? I mean, and some people nowadays, the pendulum's sort of I don't know, it's swinging, but like there was a period of time where working remotely was extremely easy. And I think we're kind of seeing a return to, other times. But however, if you do travel with your job, it's obviously there's your money. So it becomes easier. But I teach people all these because there's several different strategies. So, budgeting is important, but so is figuring out like where's the money coming from for the travel and Yeah. So I think if you use a like 3 or 4 tiered approach to the money, and if you are the person that is open to receiving this information, then it's easy. But if you're caught up in all of the what ifs and the da, 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 then we have to go through the mental clutter to get you to be able to deal with the finances.
Exactly. Exactly. So then what other, I mean, like I said, I feel like, money would be the number one, but what are the other things that you find your clients are coming to you for because they're having a hard time breaking through?
The two biggest presenting issues are the money and the logistics. So after money, it's like, oh my God, where do I start? Like, there's so much I can understand in my head I need to do before I start this lifestyle that I just don't do any of it because it's too big. And then, of course, everyone's like, well, there's so and so's YouTube channel, and then there's this, and there's that, and ChatGPT, and they go, and then they find the rabbit holes. And this person says do it this way, this person says do it that way, and also that can take you like months and years to do all that research and still not actually make any headway other than having a nice big spreadsheet. So another area that I help my clients is figuring out like a really easy approach to the logistics piece of, what do you do, when do you do it, and what's important and why.
Mm, that makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. And so what does working with a client look like to you? Like what's the process that they go through with you?
So it depends on the person. Because a lot of people nowadays just kind of want to like sort it out themselves and also be mindful of budget. I have e-courses where they can just buy the e-course, do it themselves, and then, come to me with questions. Otherwise, I do one-to-one engagements. I was doing sort of a, like, depending on the person, I had a 3-month program where I went through the mindset, the money, and the logistics. So that is where I was focused for a while. But now I'm sort of focusing more on those clients who they're either kind of ready to go in the next 6 to 18 months and just have a boatload of questions. And we can just have like a one-off consulting call where either they're rapid fire questioning me and I'm just answering all the questions, or attempt to do some strategizing with them. So that's kind of like the one-to-one has become more of like a mini VIP, if you will, instead of like a 3-month program. And then just because I try to meet people where they're at, and I think a lot of people come into this like, well, I don't need help with the mindset stuff. I'm good. I need help with the money and and then as we go into the money and the logistics, obviously the mindset stuff comes up. So at least it's an opportunity to say, well, maybe you want to work on this, right? So for me, kind of that's how it looks, is either helping people one-on-one or helping people through an e-course and being available to them if they have questions.
I love that because I think there's a part of me that's like, well, but it sounds so, I don't want to say easy, but like it sounds so logical, money in order, get rid of your stuff or get rid of the stuff that that you don't need in the future and make a plan for travel. And obviously, there's so many
Yeah.
more details in there. But since I don't need your services yet, I say yet. I don't know what I'm like, am I willing to give up the cats?
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
it's one thing to travel with children. It's another thing to travel with a dog. Traveling with cats. Nope.
It can be done. There are people that travel with their cats.
Okay.
So I will say,
Okay. Convince me. Tell me, what do they do?
yeah, I mean, I don't know, but like if you research it, there are plenty of people that travel full time with their cats. Now, some people, obviously, if you're traveling in America and you have a motorhome, that's really easy. You just stick your cats in the motorhome, done. If you're going internationally, it's a little more complicated, but there are resources for you to like get your cat taken care of. It's just a matter too of like, can your cat handle the flight?
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
These cats are not going anywhere. Not these 3. Maybe the next iteration of pets in the Cohen house. I think that there's something like very poetic and romantic when you think of like the concept of like being a full-time traveler. So, but at this point for me, it's just like a romantic notion. Tell me the difference between a full-time traveler. Like I would imagine some of you call yourselves nomads, but yeah. So
Yeah.
is there a difference or are we getting into more semantics?
Look, I have my opinions on this. There are multiple terms that can be applied. You hear the term digital nomad, and I think people, it kind of feels to me like the 20 or 30 something year old who's working on their laptop, traveling the world, right? But I mean, in some ways, I could be considered a digital nomad because and then you have like the retirees, you have the RV travelers, you have people on sabbatical that are traveling. So, and then you have part-time travelers, right? People that maybe a couple I met doing this lifestyle who's lovely. They travel like 6 months of the year, then they kind of come back for a month or two and they go back out again. So, there's so many different ways to do it that I feel like, and that I don't feel like there's a term that universally embraces all of us, because also like, nomad, well, digital nomad definitely applies, makes you think of someone that works while they travel. Nomad, unfortunately, also can have a negative connotation, like the movie, right? About someone not like being homeless, which is not what we are. And the person that's like, what about the person that's not like traveling and not working, or traveling, remote work? Remote work is for someone working out in their kitchen or their living room. It's not like, even that, it's like, okay, well, we could now kind of say working remotely encompasses, I'm working for a company and they're paying me while I decide to make my living room or kitchen in Bali my office for the day instead of, but yeah, I just feel like there's so many different terms and there's not really one that embraces all of us, and maybe there shouldn't be, but yeah, there's many different terms.
Well, that definitely goes back to like, I love games of semantics. I don't know where it came from. Maybe it's because I've always been so contrary, and that it may come from there. Okay, so tell me, what is the best part of being a full-time traveler?
Well, I will say, especially with politics, I mean, our world is going a really weird direction, and being able to go to other places and just, one, be reminded that we're not alone in this experience, and two, that we are, whatever you think is going on, maybe it isn't exactly that. Or like right now, I mean, I may do a podcast episode on like, should Americans be worried when they travel? And I think I just happened to have a really great experience in London, and funny too, where I met a Canadian and I met like a French couple. And I just think it's important to be reminded that the people of a country are not the government of a country. And as long as we all remember that, and not everybody does, but many people do. So when you can surround yourself and be reminded that there are people in the world that know that too and aren't holding certain things against you, it's refreshing and helpful.
I love that. What's the worst part of full-time travel?
Probably for me, in my opinion, like the constant need to like plan everything, pack my bags, unpack my bags, live out of a suitcase, figure out like, where's my next house sit, where's the next place I'm going. That's like a job. And sometimes it's a lot. When you do stay in a place longer, I've found it makes it easier, because then it's like, okay, put my bags down. I might be able to unpack them. And, I can just not plan anything for the next week or two. So yeah, that can help. But that job, because I mean, when travel is your life, it's different. It's not the same as like, oh my God, I'm going to like, Colorado to go skiing, and I like booked everything and I can't wait and every moment's great and planned. The other thing mindset people face is also boredom and loneliness are part of the experience. And so I'm less bored when I travel, but like I actually find that the travel experience of a full-time traveler just begins when we get bored, because that's when we actually go looking for that, let's try this street, I've never been here before, or let's go talk to this person, I've got nothing better to do. And that's when the adventure starts.
Right. Well, what I'm also hearing is that full-time travel is different if you're doing it alone or if you're doing it with a spouse, a sibling, a friend, or whatever. So, and I'm sure you encounter both on a regular basis. Do you encounter whole families traveling full-time?
Yep. And it's really cool because I've met some, I'm in a community with some. It's refreshing because I've met people who are like, oh yeah, we want to do this, but we've got kids, so we can't. And I'm like, yes, you can. Like I know people that are. So I think that traveling with kids, especially, it's really cool to see when they're really young and they're getting this amazing opportunity to experience the world and have the world be their classroom, it's pretty special.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like I missed out on that, because I mean, I love like family vacations and stuff, but sometimes on family vacation, there's
Yeah,
just too much togetherness.
true. It's true. Yes.
I think, and the other thing that I heard from you, it's like, okay, so, in my head, it's like, and what does this mean to me? And, so I traveled on business extensively in my early career. And to this day, I'm still that person, no matter where we are and how long we're there. I have to unpack the whole thing. I have to set up the bathroom, I have to set up the closet. And if my stuff is still in the bag, it's because there's limited space. Being in the bag is stressful to me. This is where like the clutter woman comes out. I am perhaps more organized when I travel than I am at home. But I think part of it is making where I am feel like home. And it's one of the reasons why I really do prefer Airbnbs or VRBOs versus hotels. It really allows me to, one, cheaper because I can have breakfast and lunch, or however many meals I want in the space. Laundry, huge thing. Not because you'd be gone for super long. I mean, like, what happens when you like a whole pot of coffee, on a white shirt or whatever? Although from full time travel, what I'm learning is I could probably get rid of it and replace it. So I think for me, there is like this idea of like home, which may mean I'm not ready yet.
I mean, because again, semantics, but like my home is literally where I am. So
Fair.
and sometimes my home is a small room with my suitcase on the side with, stuff pouring out of it. Like, but that's home. So I think it's really about a definition, and whatever home is to you may or may not mean you are or aren't ready. If home to you is I'm plunked down, I have my own apartment or house, my family is in it, and all my friends are nearby. Yeah, well, that's going to make traveling full time a little different and difficult. But if home for me is like, hey, I'm in this place now. This is home for this week or this month, and I'm going to meet new people and I'm going to go try new things. And, so yeah.
Right, right. Okay, I love that. All right. So, one of the questions that I like to ask all my guests, whether I've prepared them for it or not, is an admission of what your clutter is. And I think that people will be interested to hear because you don't literally, there isn't physical clutter. And I think for most of us, the mental clutter is scarier than the physical clutter, or physical clutter creates mental clutter creates it all goes round and round. So I think what we want to know is, so if Heather doesn't have a ton of stuff, what is her clutter?
I'm gonna make you laugh, but right now I have hair clutter. I have not had my hair cut since like September last year, and I'm very much looking forward to go. I found, getting my hair cut outside of America has become so much less expensive. It's like ridiculous. So on my next trip, I'm actually going to get my hair cut. So that's my big clutter at the moment. Otherwise, let's see. I think right now I have some health clutter going on, and I think it's going to change like every time. I mean, I'm kind of at that age where things are changing and kind of looking at, well, how am I going to keep the weight down? How am I going to keep my cholesterol down? And, what's a good plan? Actually just met with a naturopath in the UK, and I'm on a 3-month plan, and I've been doing like hatha yoga every morning. And so far I've been sticking to it and, you know, trying to just mind my health, because I think, I started this year out with a number of health issues, including shingles, and that was no joke. Yeah, so I just was like, wow, I've got all this stuff going on. This can't be good. What do I need to do to kind of rein this in? So, yeah, so I'd say health clutter would be the one.
I'm so happy you mentioned it because it was like on my list of things to talk about because you talked very honestly about a little bit of a health scare when you were in Turkey. And I think, I don't know, were you in England when the shingles happened, or
No, I
you were
was actually in New York and I had to delay my trip.
you were in New
Yeah.
York?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that this is probably something people are really scared of. What happens if I dot 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 whatever the medical emergency could be? So what do you have to say about that? And especially now after having gone through
Yeah.
it. Or maybe you can explain what happened.
So sure. So I was in Turkey for a month last August. I was in the town of Izmir where I saw wildfires across the water and I didn't think about it, but I clearly must have inhaled the air is kind of smoky and I inhaled, it turned into bronchitis, had to go to a medical center and get that looked at. And of course, I don't speak Turkish. The doctor doesn't speak English. So they have a translator. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, okay, here I am in Turkey and I'm no one. And I walk in and I get a translator. Okay, cool. So took care of that. And then, I went through like Ephesus and, all these, it's just Turkey, August. It's really hot. I know I don't drink enough water, but I'm like, I'm trying. Got my electrolytes and doing all that. Anyway, I get back to Istanbul for my final week and I realize that I am not right. Like, so it feels like I'm going to pass out. Like something is just very off. I'm very afraid. I end up at this cafe. The owners, it was my second time there, I think, and they just were so nice. They brought me tons of water. They looked after me. Ultimately, one of their clients had a car. They had him drive me to a pharmacy to get more electrolytes. And then the next day, this all happened again, at which point I said, I need to go to the hospital. For my bronchitis, I went to what's probably like a general hospital. I didn't really think about it. I just went and it was what it was. It was fine. This time I was like, I think something's like wrong and I need to go to like a good. So I went to the more expensive, but like most places in the world have like an expat hospital. And those are slightly, if you're worried about care, I'm not going to say they're all great. Like it's going to vary from country to country, but my experience happened to be really good. When I got an English speaking doctor very quickly who assessed that I was dangerously dehydrated and needed to stay overnight attached to a UV. So I felt like it's like a scary thing when especially you're traveling on your own. There is nobody there to help you in the room or whatever. And I've always been so blessed that, there's always someone there that wants to help. And that's a learning of solo travel to me is like, especially for ladies, we want to be really independent and not need anyone. And coming to grips with sometimes you need help and it's okay to accept the help was a big lesson for me. So, once I was I got to tell you, the hospital is over there I had like a comfortable, I had room to myself and a call button. If it took them 30 seconds, that was long once I pushed the call button for something.
Right, right.
So it was, I'm like, oh my God, I'm attached to an IV. I'm alone. I wish I knew more people here. I'd love to have a visitor. So that was hard, but I called some people and I was like, oh, I got to conserve my phone battery. And then I found my spare battery. So I was like, okay, it all sort of worked out. It was not great. And I will say that I did take a little bit of a break from traveling after that because I'm like, well, that was pretty heavy, but it's good to know that, there are people around the world that want to help you. And that if you, especially if you are someone that's super worried about this, I would recommend even considering choosing destinations by, go research the health facilities that are available to expats in the destinations you're going, because that might make you feel better about where you're going. When I started this lifestyle, back in 2018, one of the other things that kept me away from it was like, oh my God, all my doctors are in New York. I can't see anyone but my doctors are the best ever. And now I'm like, I'd rather go do all my medical outside of America. It's cheaper. And when I say better, it's embarrassingly better. When I was in Istanbul, in Turkey, which is not they are known for dental implants and hair transplants. But here I am, like being
Neither of which do you need.
but not, yes, hopefully never. But so I'm being released from the hospital and there's this brochure for a mobility center for Parkinson's patients. And I'm like, in the hospital I'm staying, they have the wing to help. And I'm like, where is this in America? Like our medical development is just not at all on par with outside of this country. And that's one of the things I have a hard time with about, when people want to be treated here and it might be less expensive for them, whatever. But when I go traveling, I'm treated to care. I have to pay for it, yes, but not nearly as much as I pay for it here.
I'm so happy this came up because I think it was, an important part of the conversation. You have a new program. I'd like to
Yes.
give you a chance to talk about it.
Yeah, so I just released a new e-course. It's called How to Get Started with Full-Time Travel, and it answers all the questions of, my other programs really focus on the money, so I wanted one that really focused on the logistics piece. So there's basically a few lessons on the mindset and the money because you do need both, but then the bulk of it is a 28-day challenge, and in 28 days you get a lesson per day. The feedback I've gotten on it was that it was like transforming. It was appreciated kind of how it's one lesson a day. It's a bite-sized chunk so you can actually do it and take it in and be ready for the next day. So, the idea is to really have you after 28 days, rather than going on YouTube and getting all lost, it's like step by step by step by step, boom, done, ready. And then you're at the end of it really motivated and ready to go.
I love that. I love that. So all of your information is going to be in the show notes, but is there a particular way you would want people to find you? Like say it out loud.
Yeah, so my website, there's all the iterations of it forward to Heather Begins with an S, heatherbegins.com. So you'll find most of my information there. I'm on all the socials. My YouTube channel is Full Time Travel Life, and you can listen to my podcast on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts and whatever main ones there are. It's on YouTube as well. So yeah, that's probably the best way to find me.
Love it. Love it. Amia, any last thoughts that you would want people to hear from you about full-time travel?
Just that, I mean, I've always, look, it's funny. I was at an event today and kind of looking around, being reminded, do you want to look back at your life and realize that you worked really hard? Or do you want to look back at your life and realize that you lived your life? So if this is a passion of yours and it's in your mind to do this, I would say go sooner than later. Who would have ever have thought there would be a pandemic that would cancel travel, right? So it's not worth the waiting because who knows what's coming. And it's like, while these experiences are still available, seize the day, live it, and be open to, especially if you're looking to like reconnect with yourself and want to become the best version of yourself. I can't recommend travel enough, full-time travel in particular, to get there.
It reminds me that we get stuck in thinking that things are supposed to be a certain way, and that sometimes we need someone else out there to show us like how great it can be. So don't wait, for that. And so what I'm hearing from you is a very similar thought. Don't wait, don't save it, like go for it, do it now. We had talked once. I realized that I keep saying that we're going to be done, but I have one last question for you. I saw a video that you did when you were in South Korea, and it was about fear, which I loved the idea of, because as I'm dealing with this concept of clutter, so much of our mental clutter is based on fear. So maybe you could tell the story real quickly. It's something about not being where you thought you were and being lost. And
I had been in Malaysia, which was hot as hell. And then I came into Seoul. I did not go for the cherry blossoms. I did presume that I would see them, but it turned out I flew in the storm that probably blew all the cherry blossoms away. And I ended up staying my first week about 45 minutes subway ride from the center of Seoul. And I didn't realize that put me in a place that was not terribly touristy. And while that may sound great, it meant that there was very little English spoken. My hotel I cashed in Marriott Point, so that was fine. But outside the hotel in the nearby area, a lot of people didn't speak English. And some of them were kind of annoyed with me because I didn't, and I understand. I'm very much like, I'm the traveler. It's on me to learn your language. I know a few words. I'm just having a tough time. The first few days I was aware it was like gray. I've left this warm climate and people of Malaysia for this sort of cold atmosphere and welcome of like, every day I know I'm getting it wrong. I know I'm doing several things wrong every day. I don't know how to get it right. And I don't know, I plan to stay here for a month. I have been wanting to come to South Korea for so long, and I'm getting really bummed. I don't know how to rectify this. And it ended up that, this was real culture, like, adapting to culture is a real thing. And I think it had, at that point, it had been so long since I had had that deep of a shift. And so it took me aback. I was like, well, I'm such a good adapter. I'm like, apparently I'm not. And after, like, I went into the center of Seoul and found, English speakers, and found like the beauty, the hanbok and like all this beautiful stuff. And all of a sudden it was like a sunny day and I was like, oh my God, I'm in love. And then I realized, I was like, okay, at the end of a week, the transformation was, okay, I'm still getting it wrong like all the time, but now I understand if I do this, I'm going to get this reaction. If I do that, I might not quite know how to fix it yet, but I know how to avoid certain things. And then I went to Jeju, which is an island to the south of Korea. And that's like the vacation island for Koreans. So I encountered a whole different breed of Koreans who were so lovely and welcome, like everything I was looking for. And then that just sealed it. And then I was like, I love this country. So
Gotcha.
yeah, so it was really cool.
Love that. Okay. So then the question everybody wants to know, what's the next country?
France is next. And I booked Taiwan for later this year. I've wanted to go there for a while too. And I'm worried about, again, how long I'll be able to.
So, for anybody that didn't know, Heather had actually traveled and studied in France when you were a junior in high school?
Well, I lived with a host family when I was 16. In the summers between junior and senior year, I went and lived with 2 different host families. And then my junior year of college, I studied and lived in Paris for a semester. And then I worked for France Telecom for a year in Paris. And yeah, so it's not my
You were meant for this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find it so impressive. Heather, I know we tried to finish up already, but this time we're really finishing up. So thank you so much for being here. I am certain that people are going to learn so much from this and be so inspired by you.
Cool. Thank you for having me. It's always a delight to do.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Lighten Up, the Art of Living Clutter-Free. I hope you found a spark of inspiration to help declutter not just your space, but your mind and life as well. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could use a little lightness in their life. Remember, it's not about being perfect, it's about progress. Small steps lead to big changes, and I'm here to help you every step of the way. For more tips, resources, and ways to connect, check out my website, follow me on social media, and don't forget to check out the Design Your Healthy Life Strategy program. Take your transformation even further. Until next time, keep letting go of what no longer serves you and making room for what truly lights you up.